Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, hope you're doing well. Okay, it's currently late April of 2025 and yes, I'm still here trying to finish the series, but you know, it is what it is. And yeah, let's get right into the recap of week 17 of the 2024 Gold Coast Marathon training. Week 17 is also the second week of the 3-week taper for the race. Okay, so Monday was a 10km recovery run. I think the grass was still wet at the time, so yeah, I just did around Riverwood instead. Pretty chill, relaxed. Tuesday was a 13km general aerobic run with some strides at the end. I did it around Riverwood and also Naui. On paper, the strides seem okay, but I think it was a bit risky at the time, given like I still had an injury, the side of the calf I guess. As you'd know from the previous video, I think it's the peroneus brevis or something. You know, it's a little like tendonitis strain. Wednesday was a 10km recovery run. Did it on grass this time at Bankstown City Sports Complex. Wet grass as always. Thursday was some intervals around Riverwood. It was like 4 by 1200 meters with about 2 minutes jog recovery. Somehow I ran it fairly well enough. But looking back at my data a bit, I think the cadence for the intervals were a bit higher than what I'm used to. Probably to compensate for the injury that I had. But I don't think it was getting worse at the time, so it was okay, I guess. Also met Amos after the intervals and we kind of jogged together during my cooldown, so that was kind of nice. Friday was an 8km recovery run on grass at Bankstown City Sports Complex. Yeah, no dramas, pretty chill, very relaxed. Saturday was a 11km general aerobic run. I did that Rhodes Park run with Colin, plus a bit around Rhodes afterwards. It was a fairly controlled effort overall, but yeah, I think Colin accelerated in the last kilometer, which I'm always surprised by. I was also supposed to do some strides as well, but I decided to skip it as to not make like the strain worse, I guess. And then finally Sunday was a 21km medium long run. I wanted to keep mostly controlled and like not too hilly, so I did around my usual medium long run loop around Riverwood. It was raining quite a bit that morning, but like fortunately nothing too heavy. It seemed to be quite humid that day for some reason, but yeah, I still ran it fairly well enough, I guess. Anyways, the total mileage for the week was about 87 kilometers. It was a fairly solid taper week given the injury. It wasn't getting worse by any means, but it also really wasn't getting much better either since I was still running after all. I think I was able to manage it well enough by continuing to like massage it and also do like stability and strengthening exercises on it throughout the week. Although with only like 1 week to go before race day, I already knew there's not enough time for the strain or tendonitis to actually like be fully recovered by race day. So yeah, it is what it is, but at least the aerobic fitness was still there, I guess, or at least mostly there. Anyways, while I'm still here, let's quickly go through some of my learnings from taper in the context of the few marathons I've done so far. Okay, so in terms of carb loading, there's definitely a whole science behind it, but I guess the general idea is that carbs equals glycogen equals to fuel or energy, and carb loading combined with the neutral taper, which involves like reduced volume. I guess it's like a way to sneak in extra carbs in the body, like specifically the skeletal muscles and also like the liver before the race. I think we always have a bit of carbs stored in our body in our day-to-day life and diet, but I guess carb loading allows you to sort of maximize that reserve of fuel. The idea is to like increase the proportion of carbs in your usual diet for like around 2 to 3 days before the marathon, with the amount of carbs being about 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of body mass. So for example, if I was to weigh 75 kilograms, I'd be aiming to consume about 600 to 900 grams of carbs per day under like the low and the high end, but probably around 750 grams on average. However, this also means that we should be reducing the intake of fats and maybe proteins as well, since those two can still take up a fair share of your general caloric daily intake. So with 1 gram carbs being 4 calories, and based on the previous example where I'm like around 75 kilograms, I'd have to consume about 2400 to 3600 calories worth of carbs on the low and high end of the scale. And with fat being 9 calories per gram, and protein being 4 calories per gram, we wouldn't want to be eating like around 5,000 calories per day if we're not careful, right? The other thing I heard about carb loading was to reduce fiber as well, to reduce the chances of stomach issues or something, and carb absorption. But I never really tested that myself. I never really tried intentionally cutting out fiber in my diet in the last few days before the race. So for the past few marathons I've done over the years, I've only slightly considered carb loading twice, I think. The first one was for the 2024 Gold Coast Marathon, and then the second one was the 2025 Orange Marathon. So for the 2024 Gold Coast Marathon, I just ate an extra bowl of overnight oats throughout the day on like Friday and Saturday. I'm not really sure whether it helped, but I didn't feel too bad by Sunday, which is like race morning, so I guess it wasn't too bad. However, for the 2025 Orange Marathon, the plan was to try a proper carb load for once, but it didn't really happen anyway. Throughout the week, I did have extra pasta and like rice, and then on Saturday, the day before the race, we just kind of smashed on heaps of food, which of course included carbs, but also way too much extra stuff like and junk as well. So that ranged from like overnight oats, hot cross buns, toast, gnocchi, oat milk, momos, pizza, and so on. Honestly, it kind of felt like dirty bulking rather than actual carb loading. I think we literally had 5,000 calories on Saturday, and most of it was in the evening as well, which wasn't that pleasant. And on that note, a bit of weight gain is to be expected during carb loading, but it should be mostly water weight, I think, since the stored carbs also like store water as well or something. So that's kind of normal, unless you ate like mostly junk stuff and extra calories like we did. So yeah, that's kind of bad. Anyways, I guess when it comes to future marathons, I'll try a bit of carb loading again, but I likely won't overdo it like I did for Orange Marathon. I'll probably just follow the same diet I always do in my day-to-day life and just increase the proportion of carbs that I have throughout the day, whether it's like rice, pasta, or oats, and then reduce or cut out any junk stuff. I'm a bit nervous about bonking during the race, but I'll hope that I plan well enough during the race that I take enough like gels and carbs, so that's not really an issue, but we'll have to see. I probably won't be tracking calories or grams of carbs by any means though. I think that's a bit too much dedication for me. Now in terms of sleep, I've always aimed to get good sleep in general during taper, especially during the race week and the night before, but I find that's easier said than done. I think it's usually pre-race excitement or like anxiety that makes it tricky, and also including the reduced volume of training during taper, which the body isn't quite used to throughout the whole amount of training it's done so far. So the body might have a bit more energy at the end of the day that it hasn't been used to in a while. For Gold Coast, I had to book a flight and accommodation for it. The bed was just so soft and like less comfortable than what I'm used to at home, so it was quite tricky to get good sleep. And then for the 2024 Sydney Marathon, even though I had the luxury to like not have to travel or anything during race week, I still had to wake up around 3 a.m. to get ready and then take the train and then beat the start line by at least 5:45 a.m. with the race start being like around 6:10 a.m. It also means ideally I have to be in bed like around 7 to 8 p.m, which I'm not quite used to. So trying to get into bed really early the night before didn't quite work out, and I barely got any quality sleep, especially knowing that I have to wake up early tomorrow to actually make it in time for the race. And then for the Orange Marathon, we definitely just ate way too much food the night before, combined with the soft bed in the hotel that I'm just not used to. Just didn't do us any favors. So in all those occasions, it's not like during the race I was like, oh dear, I wish I slept more last night. Maybe there were a few extra yawns and a bit of regret in the morning of the race, but I think the excitement and adrenaline that you feel when the race starts is quite real. The objective tiredness I was supposed to feel, or was feeling anyway, just kind of disappeared or like got tucked away as soon as it got going. It's not until after the race or like later in the day or the day after where I'm like, oh wow, I'm actually kind of tired now. So from experience, I guess having good enough sleep throughout the week, or at least like the few days leading up to the race, it's still good enough for me. Of course, it'd be nice to get good sleep the night before, but if that doesn't happen, then it's still quite alright, I guess. Not sure how I'm improving that just yet, but I guess I'll look into it later. Now in terms of strength and conditioning work, I still do it during the taper, at least until the final week I guess, but I just reduce or cut out resistance from the exercise so that I'm using body weight at most. I still keep up with mobility work and massage and like foam rolling whenever I can, but I won't be too fast if I'm not able to get done in the final week. I think for Gold Coast, I brought my massage ball and also my foam roller with me and used that a bit on Friday and Saturday, which definitely helped to keep me relaxed. Whereas for Orange Marathon, for example, I didn't even do any stretching or foam rolling on Friday or Saturday, or much at all in that week, I guess, but I still ran mostly fine anyway. I think ideally you'd also want to reduce the amount of steps you take or like physical activity and exercise during the days leading up to like the race day. I remember for Gold Coast, I was still going out in the day and the night and exploring the city and beaches, and maybe it wasn't that bad because it sort of helped me stay like lightly active and like keep the body moving a bit. I feel like as long as you've been generally looking after your body during the taper, have been consistent with training recovery so far, plus combined with the reduced volume of taper, you'll probably be able to get away with not like keep up with all the stuff entirely during the final week, or at least during the final days leading up to the race day. So it should be fine, I guess. The final thing I want to talk about is trusting the process and taper. I've followed the Pfitz programs for the marathon for about 3 to 4 times now. Twice entirely, that was for the 2023 Sydney Marathon and also the 2024 Gold Coast Marathon, and also twice loosely for like the 10-week back-to-back marathon program after Gold Coast Marathon, and then also for Orange Marathon, just for like the general taper structure like the last 3 weeks. So as stated in the Advanced Marathoning book, the key principles of taper are to begin tapering 3 weeks before the marathon, maintain training intensity, reduce mileage in general by like 20 to 30% in the first week, and then by 40% in the second week, and then by 60% in the third and final week, ensuring recovery days are easy and also taking days off if needed, optimizing recovery strategies with proper diet and hydration, also eliminating muscle tightness like stretching, physical therapy required, massage and rest. And based on my experience, the 3-week taper is fairly well laid out and has worked well enough for me. In the third last week, you have a medium long run for like the usual mild mid-week endurance stimulus, a relatively short tune-up race between like 8 to 10 Ks if you can find one scheduled that week to boost racing fitness and confidence, and then a long run to maintain ongoing endurance adaptations as usual like every Sunday. And then in the second last week, you have a VO2 max session, which is like intervals, just to keep you sharp, and then a medium long run on Sunday, again to maintain ongoing endurance adaptations but also like reduce the volume as well. And then in the third and final week, there's a dress rehearsal session to check that everything's right for the race, and this includes like testing a race gear and also like a bit of like race pace and effort, for example. And all these sessions are surrounded by recovery runs, sometimes with strides afterwards like to maintain leg turnover, and of course you can also take days off if needed. I've always understood that gaining fitness involves breaking out the body during training, recovering well, increasing and decreasing train loads appropriately through train blocks and periodization and so on, but towards the final few weeks before the Gold Marathon, I think there's really no need to get any fitter, and even if you could, it might be a bit risky. I feel like taper often reveals to us like how tired the body truly is, or rather how hard it's been working during the whole train process so far. There's like a fine line between gaining fitness and being overtrained or under-recovered, and therefore not being optimally prepared or like recovered for a race. So it's often better to ensure that taper goes well, like not perfectly well, but like mostly well enough, having ticked most boxes, with the aim of like overall trend of recovery all the way to race day, but you're still staying sharp and fit by maintaining intensity where needed. So trusting the taper involves knowing that you likely won't lose much fitness or any at all during the process, but rather you're maintaining fitness while also increasing freshness for race day. It's not easy to taper perfectly, but there's no need for it to be perfect. And personally, I'd rather have tapered at least something or a bit too much than like not enough or at all. The taper is there during the final few weeks leading up to the race to create a balance between like continued training to get you into the best possible racing shape while also resting and recovering enough to reduce the fatigue of training. You also might be surprised at how much race day adrenaline and excitement can mask the shortcomings of a less than ideal taper, which can be a good or bad thing. So I reckon the other important thing is to have a solid race day strategy and being able to adjust it sensibly if needed based on how you felt overall during the taper and the final few days leading up to the race, and also how you feel in the morning of the race day. It's definitely not easy, but it's all part of the whole training experience. I don't think I've ever had a taper go super well, but it's often been good enough, and I'll continue looking to ways to adjust and improve on it later on. Anyways, hope that's been helpful in some kind of way. Feel free to let me know your experiences and learnings from taper, but that's pretty much all to say for now. So as always, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.